All right, the big day is here. We're finally doing the Rubin Report fan show. In case you missed it, a couple weeks back, I had asked you guys to let me know why I should interview you. And I got to tell you guys, you did not disappoint me. We got almost 1,200 responses within a week and ended up selecting 20 of you instead of the original 5 that we had intended. We're going to release these over the course of a couple weeks, each video with a few 8 to 10 minute interviews. Many of you guys wrote incredible essays on what's going on in your life and in your corner of the world. I promise you that we read every single entry. It took us a long time, and it was incredibly difficult to make the decision of who to choose. We did our best to pick an eclectic mix of people from all over the world. On a personal note, I just want to say how truly, truly awed and humbled I am by your submissions. The fact that you guys watch this show, share it with friends and family, and are engaging in the battle of ideas yourself really makes putting myself out there worthwhile. I'm honored, really, to have such an incredible fan base that not only is connecting with me, but with each other as well. Clearly, you guys all recognize that we're in this together and that talking about the important issues honestly is the only way to move forward as part of the human race. All right, then. The first ever Rubin Report fan show is here. Let's roll. All right, I'm on with Sophie in London. Sophie, how's it going?
I'm amazing. Thank you so much for having me tonight, Dave.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right, so I saw on Twitter you're very excited to talk to me. I have a whole list of things that you had written in originally about, but I sense that more than anything else you want to talk about feminism. Am I right?
Yeah, my favorite topic. It's delicious. Delicious.
All right, well, let's dive right in. What are your feelings about feminism in 2016?
Well, Dave, the problem is feminism in 2016 isn't the feminism that once was. I think we know from Milo Yiannopoulos and Christina Hoff Sommers, who have promoted it amazingly well, this idea that modernist feminism has become akin to man-hating. It has. And I myself, having been brought up in a family of mostly females with my dad, of course, bless his heart, I know the value of being a strong, independent woman, as cliche as it sounds. And that doesn't involve safe spaces. That doesn't involve shying away from debate. You know what it involves? It involves being equal to a man. It involves working to be equal. So, you know, everything about this whole safe space concept is extremely dangerous because these students, universities, like myself, they will be subject to mollycoddling, to being told they are victims all the time. And now imagine you're being constantly told you're a victim. What is that going to do to your mentality? That is extremely damaging. And that is what modernist feminism is doing to women all the time. And it's depressing because we are meant to be for gender equality. So why are we telling these women, why are we telling females everywhere that you can't do this, that this mystical force, the patriarchy, is supposedly oppressing us? And now I say this, obviously, patriarchy is a serious issue in countries such as the Middle East and India, for instance. But in the West, you know, I can walk out of my house without a male minder and it's fine. You know, I don't have this oppression on me.
Yeah, so you're telling me you're safe when you walk out of your house in London, you can make it to the store without a man, and you can do that on your own.
You know what? I mean, sometimes I do get a bit of a panic attack coming up because I feel like sometimes the wolf whistles are going to come at me, and then I'm going to be triggered, and then it's just going to be horrific. But I just manage it. I just manage it, Dave. And the sad thing is that this is extremely patronising to women. And you know what? We have fought for equality. Why are we shying away? This takes 3 steps backwards. It is ridiculous. And the thing is, with modern day feminism, like I said, it doesn't support men's needs as well. If we want gender rights, if we want gender equality, we have to consider things that they aren't addressing. Now, from what I previously stated, the patriarchy. Now, feminists like to consider it an oppressive force on females, and they like to paint it on Western females as well, not just those that are generally oppressed. Mm-hmm. Now, I would say the patriarchy is doing a bloody bad job at benefiting the oppressors. If we look at the endemic of male suicides, for instance, if we look at the rates of male to female ratios of going into university, especially in the UK, it's atrocious. And I can't help but feel that these modern day feminists are fighting battles that are already won in the West. You know, a newspaper here in the UK, The Guardian. I'm sure you were a big fan of those lovely articles.
A little regressive for me, but every now and again there's something okay.
Exactly. There's always like a fairly good discussion on. It's like a diamond in the rough, but for the most part, it has become sort of clickbait. Guess what we're going to appropriate today? What's sexist today? How can I be a victim today? And it's so disempowering. I want to read articles about women making it in the world, which we do because we are equal to men, and we should be so proud of it. So why are we shying away from that? Why are we teaching these students that, men are horrible creatures, which is something I detest, because we are equal. And when I say equal, we are not the same, because we are biologically different. And again, we should be so proud of that. We should be proud that we fill each other's differences and we complement each other. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, all right, so we got to pause there because you're giving me a lot. I love it, and I'm on board most of these ideas, and you know what, I promise you, I'm going to send this to Christina directly so she can listen to this.
That is so lovely, thank you.
But so when you talk about these ideas, it's very obvious to me, you're not just telling me this is something you talk about in your life as well. When you talk about this either at university or with your friends, are you shunned? Have you been fighting with people? What's going on?
I've been told to check my privilege because apparently I'm not oppressed enough. I'm not oppressed enough as a woman. And apparently there are other women out there in the West that are suffering from the patriarchy that I am yet to be aware of. I think they should also talk to the working class ex-coal miner in Yorkshire who is currently suffering and can barely afford his council flat tax, So there's a slight discrepancy in their logic, and they don't see this. And I can totally empathize with what they're trying to do. They're trying to find some good. They're trying to do something. I can see the intentions, but good intentions don't always mean good results,
Yeah,
and
the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Good intentions, exactly. And like you say, when I say shunned, I don't want to be victimizing myself or, I'm so triggered by talking about this.
That was a good move there. You could have went that route, but you got out. That was good.
I could have. But in a sense, there is a wall. I will give them videos and say Christina's talks, or I'll link them. I dare not link them to Milo yet. I mean, I adore him, but I feel like they won't get him quite yet. Baby steps,
Sure.
Or I'll link them, say, peer-reviewed studies suggesting perhaps that the pay-wage gap has nothing to do with the mystical patriarchy, but is merely to do with job preferences as one of the factors, and they'll just dismiss it as saying, oh, it's just a one-off case. But how many one-off cases can you use as an excuse for that? It's straw manning, to say the least. And they're trying to fight a battle which has already been won, as Christina has already said many times.
Yeah. So do you think that goes to the feelings over facts idea? That seems to be what comes out of, unfortunately, a lot of the left these days. It
is sad, and it's sad because as much as we use the regressive left meme trope, so to speak, and it's very true, I'm trying not to think that it's most of the left because, I'm very much a liberal in ideas. I believe in equality, I believe in gay marriage, I believe all of that, and I believe in freedom of expression, I believe in exchange of ideas, and I truly believe with free exchange of ideas, you can empathize with people. You can see why people think the way they think, and there's less hatred, there's less tension, because you're able to understand one another, which is ultimately an amazing thing to do in such a globalized world. And it's hard to do that when you just focus solely on emotion and not logic and rationality, because then you can misinterpret something. You can say it's racist. You can say it's bigoted when it's perfectly an innocent statement. It's probably a statistic that is suddenly magically turned out to be racist.
Man, you are preaching my logic or something. I just mangled that one. I think you could be my new co-host. But wait, I want to shift to one more with you. So you mentioned in your submission that there's a form of atheism also that you don't like. And now I've had a lot of atheists on here. I'm pro-atheist and I'm pro-logic and reason and all that stuff. But you think that that some of the movement, so to speak, has taken a turn that you don't like. Can you tell me about that?
Sure, of course. I'm an atheist myself. Huge fan of the secular movement. I think we are very, very fortunate to be living, in mostly a secular world with exceptions, and I'm glad we are doing a lot of work towards fixing that. However, I do think there is a sinister smugness in the atheist movement, and I do think it's connected to some of the far left, because it's very interesting how some of these people swap, say, a religion for their own ideology, a fervent ideology based on the patriarchy or based on imaginary things, and it's very religion-like. So in an essence, someone suddenly swapping religion, and I'm not anti-religion, I might be atheist, but I'm not anti-religion at all. I think there's a lot to be said for some of the cultural things, like the Anglican Church for the United Kingdom has given us culture, it's given us art, it's given us an explosion of things we can't deny.
Totally hear you.
Exactly. So one must be careful when criticizing belief, which is totally fine, and not the believer and the benefits of what that belief has given us. But I do also think that some of these people go a very Marxist route. So they do believe that religion is the opiate of the people, say, and they completely exchange logic and reason for their own ideology. So it's not like they're an atheist that has become an atheist because they've discovered science or they've, read more of Dawkins. They've become an atheist sort of as a result of the ideology through the cultural Marxism that is being perpetuated in a lot of the academia nowadays. That's why I'm worried about that route. But for the most part, I'm perfectly joyous at a secular movement, so that's fine with me.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, this went by super fast. Clearly,
I know.
we could have talked a lot more. I'm curious. What do you want to do with your life? Because obviously you have a lot to say, and
I do have
you
a lot
should get
to say.
that voice out there.
That's very kind of you. I have a lot of. I want to start my own business. I'm quite ambitious actually, and I'm just finishing up my final year at university, so I'll be free from the shackles soon enough. But I'm going to have a think about what I'm going to do, actually. I'm going to have a think, because this has been a pleasure, actually. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
All right, I'm on with John from Turkey. Now, John, it's spelled C-A-N, but as I know that the C in Turkey is a J.
Yes.
Is that all I need to know about your alphabet? There's a couple other things I should probably know, right?
Probably, but it's pretty much easy.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy. Yeah.
All right, well, we have a lot to talk about because we've talked a bit about Turkey on the show, and you sent us a great email with explaining some of your frustrations with Turkey, some of the good things with Turkey.
Yes.
We're hearing a lot about Turkey in the news right now for a series of reasons. So I'm going to start it there. Give me just the general state of things in Turkey right now.
Well, the life in Turkey is tough, but I can say that it's relatively easy than living in any other predominantly Muslim country in the region. But there are still tons of human rights violation, pressure on free press, pressure on free thinkers, and we also have a massive refugee crisis, and this creates security problems, economical and social problems. And also we have a really polarized country. Like there are many different social and cultural groups that have different lifestyle, different values and expectations from life. And finally, we have, what can I say? We have a internal conflict for more than 40 years between the Kurds and Turks, and it blurs the line between the Islamists and the secular. Like, it even makes Islamists and some secular Turks stand together against the Kurds.
So I assume, are you totally secular? Are you an atheist? Are you religious? Are you Muslim? Some combination thereof?
No, I'm atheist and I'm totally secular. I'm for secular and liberal values.
Yeah.
That's it.
Can you be openly atheist, openly secular there? Because it sounds like the prime minister has sort of been cracking down on, or he's making the country more Islamist in a sense.
Well, he tries his best, and he has a great support. I mean, he's been winning every single election that he was getting into. He has been getting into for 14 years. He has half of the votes every time.
Yeah.
And also we have another Islamist and nationalist party in the parliament. But I can also say that we have roughly 1/4 of the population that is secular. And for secular values, they have secular lifestyles. There are many atheists. It's always said that Turkey is 98% non-Muslim and that kind of stuff, but I think it's less than this. And it's Muslim atheist community is getting bigger and bigger every day, and people are understanding that secular values are really important for us.
Yeah, so that's really interesting because, we hear from people in the West all the time. They always use Turkey as the example of sort of like, a good Muslim country. Because you're okay. You can do this. You have no fear about being on this show, right? You can do this and you're not. I mean, I know that Erdogan is cracking down on the press, but do you?
Yeah, I do. I can. I don't know if it's okay to say, but I don't know, like sometimes I feel like if I do some certain stuff, I can lose my job. Some certain things can go badly and that kind of stuff. So, but in the same time, I wanna speak out. I wanna be open, and I wanna share my ideas and values, and I wanna stand for these values for my country and for the entire universe, especially.
Yeah, well, I love that. That's exactly why I do the show. So let's talk a little bit about the immigration situation, because obviously you guys, you share a border with Syria. It sounds like at some level, a lot of the European fighters for ISIS come through Turkey to get there. Then you guys get the refugees. Then, as you said, there's also this issue with the Kurds who are sort of caught in the middle and being fought on by both ISIS and Turkey.
Yes.
So what's the general situation as far as like integrating the immigrants? Are they staying in Turkey? Are they just using Turkey to go to the rest of Europe? What's going on?
Well, there's literally no integration, because I mean millions of people keep coming to Turkey, and you cannot shut down the border. You cannot just say that we are not welcoming you. So we have to accept them, but they're coming by millions, and like they're on the streets, and there's a lot of social problems. Like I started seeing in different cities in Anatolia, like beggars on the streets, like people living on the streets, and refugee camps and that kind of stuff. And also, I want to say that like people say Turkey, but Turkey is a really big country. For example, Syria border is roughly 1,000 kilometers away from me.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see that. I don't feel that effect of ISIS and that kind of. But cities on the border suffer the most.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Yeah, so you also wanted to talk about the regressive left, of course. I'd say out of our 1,200 emails, I'd say about 1,000 of them did have the phrase regressive left. So how has this regressive ideology affected your life in Turkey?
Well, whenever I hear a regressive talking on any TV show or on YouTube, like blood rush into my head and my palms start sweating. I keep getting angry because they are telling lies, like they are telling stupid stories about Turkey and about Muslim countries. For example, that harmony myth. They say Turkey is the harmony between secularism and Islam. That it's perfect country. I mean, whenever someone criticizes Islam, they say it's the perfect example. And you say all Muslims, but here is Turkey. It's our NATO ally. So you're a bigot. You're an Islamophobe. But the reality is much different than that. I mean, there is a struggle between the secularists and the Islamists, and it's not just And whenever you see like something about Erdogan on the media, it's presented like he's holding us as hostages, like there's a dictator and he's doing whatever he wants. No, he has a huge support from the society. I mean, 50% of people supports him, love him. They just support and love him. So, but at the same time, we have seculars. So it's just a constant battle between us. So it's not just a harmonious coexistence.
Yeah.
And regressives keeps telling lies about it. And you know, I want to say something more. For example, I always see some Muslim guys speaking with confidence about truth in Islam, like how wonderful it is and that kind of stuff. But then I see people from the left in the Western countries who are cherishing the Western values the most. And they start talking cowardly, being incapable of defending universal liberal values. So I can't get it. What's wrong with you? I mean, what's wrong with these liberals in the West? I mean,
I wish I knew what was wrong with them, because it would solve a lot of my personal problems. I don't know. So, but how big is that ideology there? Like, so you have the Islamists. Now, okay, we get what they're about, and then you have the secularists. How big is that piece that is this sort of regressive thing?
You mean seculars?
Well, how big is the regressive part that's sort of trying to quiet the secularists? Because we know that the Islamists are trying to quiet the secularists, right?
Right. You know what? We don't have enough comfort to be regressive, right? We don't have any regressives in our country, but regressives keep helping the Islamists in the West, and they do not care about us. I mean, there are guys in Bangladesh, in Saudi Arabia, in many Middle Eastern countries. They are getting hacked to death by machetes, and people keep talking about. I mean, wearing a burqa is it a right or what is that? Or people keep talking about being a proud Muslim and that kind of stuff. I mean, this really makes me angry because people are fighting for freedom here, and people like they're losing their lives. And then I see people living in comfort and calling people, even people like me, Islamophobes. I've been called by Westerners Islamophobe for
Yeah.
many times, even though I'm living in Turkey. I was born in Turkey.
Right,
And I was
you're
born
living
Muslim.
in it. They're living in the comforts of the West, and they're calling you an Islamophobe. Listen, man, we
Apparently they
could
know
go
better
on
than
forever.
me.
We could go on forever here, but unfortunately, we got to keep rolling. But it was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thank you for picking me out of 1,000 people.
Thanks for submitting. All right, we'll talk again. All right, I'm on with Basheer in Jordan. Basheer, how's it going?
Doing well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
My pleasure. I'm doing great. All right, so you're the third one up. We're dancing across the globe here. You know, Jordan, one of the things when I saw your email, you're actually the only person from Jordan that emailed, and we never really hear anything about Jordan. You hear about the Middle East constantly. Every day in the news, something terrible is happening in the Middle East. But Jordan, you don't hear much. The king comes here and he has a nice suit and looks good and everything. That's pretty much all you hear about Jordan. So tell me a little bit, what's going on in Jordan?
Well, yeah, I think Jordan's like this eye of the storm. And when you have a storm, nobody speaks about the eye of the storm because it doesn't do anything. So all the damage is happening all around us, but Jordan is pretty safe and nothing really happens, except we keep taking in refugees from all over. And the latest numbers I've looked at, almost a third of Jordan's population is actually refugees, including my family. We came from Palestine after the first issues with Israel.
Yeah.
After the Second World War. So yeah, my family is included in that number.
Do you have full rights? Do Palestinians in Jordan have full rights? I thought they can't vote in certain things or have certain jobs or something.
Well, that's a tough one. There's so many regulations. So my family has been here from the start, so I'm kind of okay. But Palestinians who've come later do have some issues, especially with, like you said, in the legal system. They're not fully protected,
Yeah.
so to speak. Yeah.
How do you feel in terms of, so you emailed me, you're doing this right now, like just in the general terms of being able to speak your mind and not worry about government coercion or anything like that? Like, do you feel pretty comfortable?
I think I do. I stopped really bothering with it too much. It was really difficult to start speaking out. Eventually you find your own circles, and at some point there's this tipping point where you just don't care anymore about the consequences. You just fight for what you think is right, and this is one of the reasons I love your show and I love you and I admire you for what you're doing.
Thanks. All right, so you gave me a bunch of great stuff to talk about here. One of the things you wanted to focus on was the Western apologists for Islam. Now, obviously, obviously, I have spent a lot of time talking about it, right? And I always try to separate, the Muslim people from the doctrine of Islam. It's very hard to do, as we know. But yeah, go ahead. The Western apologists. You're in a Muslim majority country, having to live under certain laws dictated by Islam. So what do you make of these people in the West that are apologizing for this?
Well, I'll just start out by saying, like, even your distinction is sometimes a bit blurry. Like, even when you separate Muslim peoples and the doctrine of Islam, I think there's still some muddy areas in between.
Sure.
I mean, sure, all of us want to be nice and peaceful, but at the same time, when you're in a conflict and you expect the other side to be as nice as you, that's, I think, a bit silly. You don't walk up to a lion with a flower and expect, like, yeah, they'll be friends forever.
Right.
So yeah, that doesn't work. The Western apologists, my problem with them is by focusing on they misdirect the problems and the issues, and as if it's like, no, it's not as bad. I'm sure like people like Reza Aslan and the Young Turks. Sorry for bringing that up, but what they practically do is the effect on the good people like yourself and like the classical liberals or whoever is genuinely caring about what's happening in the Middle East and the Muslim majority countries. They take the conversation away, and it alleviates this sense of urgency. They just kill it. Like, if you wanted to help, and then you hear someone who claims to be a scholar and like he knows everything on the inside, and they tell you that no, it's all fine, then you just think, yeah, I don't feel the urge to help anymore. Right. And for us on the inside, we see this almost on a daily basis. I mean, female genital mutilation, homophobia, and all the terrible things people just genuinely dislike in the West. These are real problems, and we would appreciate the help from everybody who can help.
Right. So in a way, so you're in like a particularly I guess tenuous situation, because you're clearly I assume you identify as a classical liberal or a liberal or some Western-ish something. You stand for basically Western values, I sense, right? And you sort of need the help of the outsiders to make change there, because it would be very hard to do on your own, right?
Well, of course the help would be much appreciated, but when what's the opposite of helping? They're just not helping at all, and they're actually making everyone else feel like there's no problem. Yeah. And when you think there's no problem, then, well, what are you going to do? The problem's going to keep on escalating until it just blows up. So it's a tough question, I think, because, I mean, sure, the help would be needed, but, not ruining it for us would be also appreciated.
Right. So on a day-to-day basis living in Jordan, like, how much is religion affecting? Well, are you religious at all? Do you have any religious?
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not.
So how much religiosity, what's the word there? How much of that are you, I think I got something close. How much of that is affecting your day-to-day life?
Well, my day-to-day life isn't really a problem for me, but if you look at other segments of society, like women or homosexuals or, any kind of traditionally marginalized group, because Jordan's still a very patriarchal society, unlike what feminists in the US want to tell you.
Right, right.
Yeah. So, I mean, being a woman, if you walk down the street, you're expected to be dressed appropriately, which is pretty much covered up. And it's not really strict like in Saudi Arabia where you have to wear the veil. It's not like that. But like, don't show legs or, So it's kind of moderate in that sense. The religiosity is pretty much everywhere. Like, you always see these verses from the Quran or somewhere in the streets. You always hear the call to prayer 5 times a day. So, and it's part of our language. We always say, like, you might have heard this phrase, inshallah.
Of course.
So yeah, Allah, the Prophet always come into these traditional phrases. We don't probably mean it to be religious, but it's just ingrained in us. And yeah, it's just inescapable, really. But I mean, it's not as bad as elsewhere. So that's some hope for us.
Yeah. Well, this was quick. Wait, we're basically wearing the same shirt. I just realized it's pretty close.
Oh.
So we're in good company. Listen, I could go way longer with you, but we got to go. You're third out of 20. But it was a pleasure talking to you, and let's stay in the loop. And I hope to get to Jordan one day.
Well, you're always welcome.
Great. Thank you so much.
Don't tell us you're gay, though.
We'll keep it quiet. We'll keep it quiet. Don't worry. All right, I'm here with Felix in Germany. Felix, you dressed for the occasion. Finally, somebody that's looking sharp. That's nice to see.
Thank you. I mean, you are always dressed very well, so I thought I'd dress up for the occasion as well.
Very nice. You one-up me with the tie. Next time, maybe I'll see what I can do. All right, so we got a lot of responses from Germany. I'd say after probably the United States, UK, maybe Canada, and then India. I think Germany was right there in the top 5. So you're the one that we selected from Germany. So tell me, what's going on in Germany these days?
I mean, the biggest thing is obviously the refugee crisis and the whole political field that is surrounding that. So kind of our politics is in kind of trouble because we have people who don't agree with established politicians and established politicians fighting each other. So it's really interesting times.
Yeah, so we've talked about it a little bit. Basically, you guys have let in about 1.3 million immigrants or migrants or refugees, whatever you want to call them. You guys give them some pretty great social services, right? It seems like they get a lot. So what is the problem? Is there an integration problem? Is it more from the German side? Is it from their side? Is it both? Is it economics? What's going on?
See, Dave, I would say it's not a problem with either the German locals or the migrants or refugees themselves. It's a problem with systems. The government let in all these immigrants who are not necessarily all refugees because there's really no proper control who gets in and who doesn't. And they sort it out later in a process that takes months until the whole asylum application goes through. And then we take in 1.3 million of them, but there's no system to give them shelter effectively, to integrate them, to teach them about the German culture. So what we get is a lot of people bunched up in a really small place who come from different cultures than our home culture and who then form their own little subcultures and don't integrate very well because they have nobody to really talk to except for their own people.
Yeah, so does Germany have sort of a special place in this because of the history with Germany? And obviously xenophobia in World War II. And Germany has done a tremendous amount to repair that, and the culture has completely changed. I think that's very obvious. But that there's a certain amount of guilt that, so you want to do the right thing, and then they come here, and then the systems, as you're saying, are just not in place. So it's like the idea doesn't quite match up with the reality of what's going on?
That's exactly what's happening. I mean, in Germany, we have a certain type of unique political correctness, and that we really still have the shame or the guilt and want to redeem ourselves, basically, even though we are almost 2 generations removed from the events. But most Germans still feel the need to be proper to other people and to help out others. So there is this goodwill of helping these people, and naturally people who come from civil war-ridden areas, there is a human feeling of you have to help them out. But I think the way we are doing it now is really failing those people in need and is also failing the people locally in Germany.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what happened on New Year's Day in Cologne, because I thought that was sort of a perfect example of why this whole debate is so crazy. So there were these mass attacks that mostly, it sounds like they were mostly done by migrants, assaulting women, there were rapes and all this stuff. And I saw the reaction of the left here immediately was saying, this is Islamophobia and all of this stuff that we talk about endlessly. And really, it didn't have anything to do with that. If any group had attacked a whole bunch of women, I would have been against that group. How was the reaction in Germany to that? Because it sounded like it took a couple days for it actually to catch on, right? And then people didn't really want to talk about it.
Well, it almost took a few weeks because the fact that those groups who assaulted the women were mainly immigrants was hidden away from the public essentially by political officials and the police. And the reaction was quite interesting because people were really afraid and really angry about the situation. And some on the left did the same as leftists in America and tried to put it away from Islam as a religion or culture. And then on the right, a lot of people blamed Islam or Muslims in general for that, which is obviously also way too extreme. But kind of the center is missing where we acknowledge the problem, that there are cultural differences, and if you put young males who come from this culture, who've been growing up in this culture, put them in a place and just let them have their own communities without any integration, that these problems can occur and will occur. And that's where we have no solution for it because we can't acknowledge the problem.
Yeah, so with everything you've said so far, do you guys have a particular sort of fear of the right-wing parties growing because of the history of your country, that you don't want the xenophobic people to actually take power, and then at the same time, as we talk about all the time, if the left doesn't deal with these issues honestly, it almost seems like the average person, the person that's in the middle that you're talking about, well, then they go to where the only answer is being spoken of, even if it's not something they agree with.
That's exactly right, and that's what we've been seeing. I mean, there's always a move from the established politicians to ban these few very right-wing parties that we still have in Germany, which are really extreme, at least some of them are. And they always try to ban them via the legal system. But now, with the Alternative for Germany, the AfD in Germany, that's a new party that has sprung up in all this controversy. And they've become very, very big. And a lot of people jumped onto that opportunity. But at the same time, a lot of right-wing extremists obviously jumped on that. And the established politicians all try to paint this new party, which is more conservative, more right-wing, into the Nazi corner to isolate them. Mm-hmm. But what then, of course, happens is that you get a lot of extremists to join that party, and you don't find the real discourse.
Yeah. So one of the things that you wrote that I thought was really, really great. So first off, you're starting a podcast with a Hungarian friend. Is he in Germany, or is he in Hungary or somewhere else?
No, he's in Hungary. In person, we've only met once when I visited him. We connected through the internet just by chance. I met him one day, and we started talking. And because we both felt the need to speak out about politics, about philosophy, about our societies, and to discuss how we can make them better, we started having night-long discussions, literally through the night until the sun came back up. And at some point, through shows like yours, where you really emphasize the need to make your voice heard, we decided we have to do something. And we decided to basically start a podcast to get other people in to discuss that stuff with us and to develop our opinions openly and to kind of make a difference.
Yeah, well, listen, I love that. And if every single person that watched this show started their own show and I became completely irrelevant, but the ideas won, I'll be happy to retire on a farm in Wyoming or something. So one of the phrases that you used in your email to us was the difference between a global network and a local network. And I thought this concept was really cool because it's very much what we're doing here, and it's why I wanted to do this fan show. And we have 20 people, I think, in 18 countries or so, or 15 countries. So can you describe what you meant by that concept?
So a lot of our local networks, like universities, schools, but cities and even countries, are very isolated. We have a consensus usually in those networks. In universities in America, for example, you have all the social justice warriors having a real consensus and a lot of power. Yeah. So you can't, I think as a modern human, you can't rely on that to get a full picture. So these global networks that are enabled by the internet are really where it's at, where you can get your ideas challenged, where you can get new ideas, where you can exchange ideas, and that's where you develop the good stuff.
Yeah, well, I love that. It's very much a concept that I believe in and that I'm trying to put into action. And we got to go, but definitely let me know when the podcast is up. Just email us again. I'll be happy to send people over there. And I'll be a guest if you want. How about that?
Oh, that would be amazing. It's actually up now. We're at episode 4 now.
Nice.
And you can find that on needlesslycomplicated.com, on iTunes and everything else. And if you want to be a host, I'm happy to, a guest, I am happy to send you an email.
You be the host, I'll be the guest. How about that?
Yeah.
All right, so I am with Monica in Paris, France. And Monica, you know, I got a zillion people that emailed from Paris, but your bio, just where you've bounced around from, a little bit of your family's history, there was so much there that you were the winner from Paris.
Oh, cool. It's an honor. Thanks.
All right, so first off, just tell me, so you told me that you grew up with 2 atheist parents, but that was also colored with a Mexican tradition and a Jewish tradition. Can you just explain some of that?
Yeah, so my mom is from Mexico. She's from a city to the north of Mexico City, and she immigrated to the United States as a baby. And my dad is of Russian Ashkenazi descent, and they both met in university. They've always been atheists, both of them, and they raised me and my sister not to be atheists, but religion just never played a part of our lives.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were raised between the two cultures, which was quite difficult growing up in Arizona and California. We were never Mexican enough to be Mexican, never like white enough to be white. So it was an interesting experience.
Right.
And I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah, that's really cool. So then you bounced around pretty much all over the world. So can you give me like a 1-minute synopsis of just where you've bounced around, and then we'll dig into some of the things that you want to talk about.
Yeah, sure. So I lived in Argentina for about a year in 2012. After that, I lived in Israel for a while, and now I live in France.
Yeah.
So I've lived in a few different countries.
Okay, so let's go to some of the reasons that you've bounced around. So you met an Israeli and you moved to Israel, and then you were there during the Gaza War of 2014, I think.
Yeah, so I was there during Protective Edge.
Protective Edge. So tell me a little bit about what it's like to be in a country that is at war.
It was really scary. So I still remember the very first time I heard a missile. I was watching a show on my laptop, and I heard an explosion, and I didn't really think anything of it, and then I heard more explosions. And then there were sirens, and I had no idea what to do. I was living in a small house that didn't have a bomb shelter. So I ran outside. My neighbors told me to run into the bomb shelter next door. And I couldn't have known, but then after that, for the following months, it just became the norm. Like at least minimum 7 times a day, I found myself in a bomb shelter. And I was an English teacher at the time. And a lot of our class time was spent learning in bomb shelters.
Yeah, so what's that like being around kids when this is happening? I mean, you're literally, I assume every school there probably has a bomb shelter, right? Like,
yeah.
So in the middle of the day you're teaching, and then suddenly we all have to run downstairs.
Yeah, so the kids know the drill. The kids are eerily desensitized to it. It's just the norm for them. You know, inside the bomb shelters we have teaching materials, and it was like everything just kind of kept going like normal for them. It's just part of their everyday.
Yeah, so then, okay, so you were there for that, and then you moved to Paris, and you were in Paris during the Paris attacks, right?
Yeah, so Charlie Hebdo happened just months after me arriving, and my initial reaction was disappointment, because I left Israel to kind of get away from all that danger,
Sure.
and then I found myself in the middle of it again. I was shocked. I felt really angry. And then the way people reacted to an attack like that in Paris was so different than the way Israelis would have reacted.
So that's one of the things that I thought was really interesting. So you mentioned that basically a lot of people said, oh, we're defending Charlie Hebdo, but that really privately, that's not really what they were doing, right?
Yeah, so there was like a protest where people went out in the street and they were like holding up pencils, and I didn't want to participate in anything like that, because I'm just thinking like the people who shot these cartoonists and shot these artists were not trying to take away their pencils. Like, they were trying to kill them. It has nothing to do with your ability to write or draw a cartoon. Like, they want to murder people. So I just felt like the reaction was very soft, and just very different than the Israeli reaction would have been.
So what would the Israeli reaction be? I mean, they're dealing with this pretty much every day.
I think we all know what the Israeli reaction would have been. It would have been something that probably most of the world wouldn't have been very happy with.
Yeah.
That most of the world would protest against. And something that I would have protested against before I lived in Israel. When I went to Israel, I wouldn't have described myself as pro-Israel, but now I would. Because it's just very different when you have the missiles flying over your head. And if it wasn't for that Iron Dome interception system, you know, they could just fall on your head and kill you and all your friends and family. So it changed my perspective completely.
Yeah, interesting. So, okay, so then you were there for Charlie Hebdo, then the more recent attacks at the theater. How has that changed society? Because it does seem like that attack, and then Brussels, and then we had the thing here in San Bernardino, that now there is some piecing of this all together across the globe. And I think it felt like it started with that one.
I'm from San Bernardino, by the way. So
really?
This is all hitting very close to home for me.
Man, you really are you're something.
Nuts.
Okay.
So the most recent attack was very unsettling. I had the same feeling towards the French reaction that I did for Charlie Hebdo, kind of just disappointment in the lack of I don't know, like a strong reaction. It was more just like a soft reaction that we have to protect people who haven't even been insulted yet. Everybody was just worrying about hurting a certain group of people's feelings instead of actually trying to get to the root of the problem.
Yeah.
Um,
How deep is that? How deep is that feeling in France? Because I mean, that's what we talk about when we talk about this regressive ideology, that we care more about feelings over facts. How much has that sort of seeped into society over there?
I would say probably even more so than in America. People here are very concerned about being politically correct in a country that has a very high percentage of North Africans and Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
People are very careful to choose their words. The media is very careful about what they say and how they say it, which is a good thing and a bad thing. But I would say that now things have kind of died down. Honestly, people have kind of forgotten about it. Security is very lax everywhere. They still have some like emergency procedures in place ever since Charlie Hebdo. So it's been almost 2 years that we've had these emergency procedures that are supposed to be in place, but like private and public security in France is just not where it should be.
Yeah. So the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, or that you mentioned, is that there's two things happening in France right now. So one is the immigration situation. So you have all these migrants coming in, and then at the same time, basically Jewish emigration from France, so Jews leaving France, is at an all-time high. I was actually in Israel in November, and I heard a tremendous amount of French being spoken there. I couldn't believe it. I mean, there were signs in French. All the places that were selling houses were written in Hebrew and in French. So what's going on there?
So I can't speak too much about the immigration of refugees to France because honestly, we hear about it on the news, but it doesn't affect me at all. I don't see them. It just doesn't play a role in my life, so I can't really speak on that. But
Sure.
I have been very involved in the French Jewish community, so I know how they feel about the situation in France and in Israel. So there's kind of this feeling in the French Jewish community, I don't want to say not a victimhood, but they're a very closed network of people like in the Paris area.
Mm-hmm.
And they always feel targeted and they feel like Israel is kind of like this El Dorado. It's like this thing that they idolize and it's like this ideal utopia that they all want to strive to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
So every time there's an attack, it's like the percentage of French Jews that leave France just skyrockets.
Yeah.
But then another interesting phenomenon is that when I was in Israel, I met so many people who leave Israel after intending to settle there, just like I did.
Right.
There's actually a word in Hebrew for that. It's called yerida. So aliyah is when you immigrate to Israel to go live there, supposedly forever.
Right.
And then there's even a word to describe leaving there forever because you just can't handle the quality of life. So French people encounter that. They leave hoping to find this network of acceptance and like living amongst Jews just going to be amazing. And then they get there and realize that they were kind of sold a dream and a lot come back.
Yeah, so it's sort of like the grass is always greener. You have it one way and
Exactly.
you think, okay, it's going to be better over there.
That's exactly what it is.
All right, well, you've given me a lot, and we're plowing through all these interviews, but it was a pleasure talking to you, and good luck with the rest of your adventures.
Thank you so much.